Welcome to the Free Library of Philadelphia. My name is Laura Kovacs, and I'm honored to introduce our guests this evening. Brittney Cooper has risen to become one of the most prominent thought leaders of her generation. She explores the intersections of race, gender, and politics in the classroom at Rutgers University, where she's a professor of women's and gender studies and Africana studies, and online as co-founder of the Crunk Feminist Collective. In 2017, she was named to the Root 100 list, and in 2018, to the Essence Woke 100 list. She is the author of Beyond Respectability, a map of the development of female African American intellectuals. Her 2018 book, Eloquent Rage, A Black Feminist Discovers Her Superpower, was named a Best Book of the Year by the New York Public Library, The Atlantic, Bustle, The Root, NPR, and Fast Company, among many other venues. The book celebrates the power of anger, dispels stereotypes, reminds women of their power, and ultimately shows how what you build is infinitely more important than what you tear down. Tonight, she'll be joined in conversation with Rebecca Traister, writer-at-large for New York Magazine and author of All the Single Ladies, Big Girls Don't Cry, and most recently, Good and Mad, The Revolutionary Power of Women's Anger. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brittney Cooper and Rebecca Traister to the Free Library.
You got it?
I think so. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Let us know if you need us to move the microphones closer or farther away. Hello. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Thank you to Brittney, whose book, ever since we did this, the hardcover edition of Brittney's book was published a year ago.
Yes.
And it absolutely blew my mind. I was still working on a book about anger at the time, and I was like,
Good and Mad, yes.
So I want to talk to you actually, starting with when you decided you were going to write a book about Black feminist anger. What point in your life, what made you decide this is the book I'm going to write?
Yeah. So, I was actually, I don't know that I had this epiphany about like the need to write about rage. I just, I had been writing in the public. Really, I started writing in the public in 2013. Crunk Feminist Collective was 2010. In 2013, I started writing for Salon during the George Zimmerman trial. Mm-hmm. So I came to, sort of national note, writing about Black men being killed by police, and then writing about Black women being killed by police, and then as an active member of the movement for Black Lives. And so there was all of this political rage. And at the same time, I got this book deal at the end of 2015, and I actually got it on my 35th birthday. Yeah. I have a couple friends in the audience who are like, you're only 34, I'm not 34. But I got it on my 35th birthday, and what I'll tell you that I was actually feeling, I was feeling like a failure. I was actually feeling like it had taken me a long time to finish my first book, Beyond Respectability. I had this goal of getting tenure at Rutgers by the time I was 35, and I just didn't get there at that point. I was unmarried, I didn't have any kids, and I was like, basically, I don't have shit. I ain't done shit, and here I am. And, I have no books, I have no tenure, seriously. And I was like going around saying this to my friends in the 6 months leading up to my 35th birthday. And around that time, my agent called and said, now is the time to do this. And I've been putting her off because I actually didn't feel worthy to write a book of this type, and didn't think that I really had anything significant to say. And so I think that what I arrived at was the desire to do both things, to tell the political narrative, but also to talk about what it means to be a Black woman living out those politics every day, having regular challenges about wanting to make a significant mark in the world, wanting to be accomplished in ways that we think matter, and also dealing with just turning on social media and seeing your people slaughtered in the street, because you would see that, but then you have to come home and live with that, right? And there's a way that, it was easy to make a spectacle of Black death and much harder to talk about the ways that Black people actually lived with that every day. And so I had a student call my rage eloquent many years prior. And as I was thinking about this book, it was the thing that resonated. It was the thing that had powered so much of my writing. A lot of the public writing I was doing was me getting comfortable, I think embracing that rage, as, you know, like there was always a wellspring of it because of the shit Black girls go through. Like the point is that I already had a well of rage, and then 2013, once Trayvon Martin was killed in 2012, then it just piled on, right? And so I needed to figure out how to channel that rage in a way that didn't feel destructive and didn't participate in the logics of a system that felt like they were trying to kill us anyway. Yeah.
You write in the book about how prior to that student telling you that your rage was eloquent rage, you, like so many, tried to sort of look away from your anger or pretend that it wasn't, you didn't lead with your anger, you knew the risks, you knew the censure, the punishments that were going to come for you, especially as a Black woman, if you gave voice to that rage. Once that student told you that, and then once you start to work toward this kind of storytelling, does it change the way, once you can look directly at your anger, does it change the way you see the world and your life in a way that is ongoing?
I think that what changed for me, what has always been, this is a thing that I think is weird about me, not necessarily unique, but still weird, is that my way of coping with the sort of copious assaults that I think Black girls go through, one was to like use education as my drug of choice. I was like, but I can get these A's though, and then I will be unstoppable, right? And then I like one of my biggest life lessons has been to actually learn to embrace how I feel. Because I'm like, oh no, because in this book, I like know why I feel this way. Like I know the why, like I have the analysis. And so learning that the analysis wasn't enough and that sometimes you just have to feel it. Like it's so funny that I wrote such a touchy-feely book because I'm not touchy-feely at all. I'm really not. It's like, my friends know me, I'm not a hugger, like really I'm not. And but this was my way. So what I came to learn was one, that was a losing battle and that I needed a healthier relationship between emotion and politics. And so this book was an attempt to try to arrive at that, but also like giving myself permission to be like, you have the right to be angry. The problem when you feel mad and you don't give yourself permission to feel it is that you're almost gaslighting yourself because you're making yourself feel like things aren't as bad as they actually are. But all of the conditions that we're living through, we have the right to be angry because, it feels like, that old movie Back to the Future where like he arrives in a version of 1985, but like something went wrong, on the way. And it feels like we arrived in 2019 in a version that we didn't agree to, right? And we have the right to feel angry about that. And so that's, I think, the thing that changed was giving myself permission to be fully human and in a way that I think Black women are denied. Like, that thing about calling Black women angry Black women that sets us all up to be running around talking about, I'm not angry, I'm passionate, which is what I said to the student, right? It comes from a fundamentally violent place of we're made to be alienated from our emotions as the cost of trying to get societal respect. And I think that's deeply unjust. And so my student gave me permission because what she said, my job was to teach. And what she said to me that day when she said, I love to listen to you lecture because your lectures are filled with rage, but it's like the most eloquent rage ever. She helped me to know that I showed up in the classroom and I was good at my job. In the midst of my rage, that it didn't diminish how I showed up. It actually made me show up in a way that felt more authentic. And it also recalibrated, like so much of the alienation from rage is about trying to gain the respect of white people. And part of the thing that encounter and confrontation helped me to see that I valued was that I don't actually care about the respect of white people if I lose the respect of Black women and girls, right? And so, so she helped me to realize that was the thing, that if I showed up in a room, then the people I'm actually showing up for, that if they see me, that actually matters more. And that, it was like a rescue. And look, I'm ambitious, I'm professional, I have goals like professional Black girls do, and that means you have to play the game. But she was like a compass to just remind me, but who are you playing it for? Right? And I was like, oh, right. I'm playing it so that when you show up in the room and you see me, that if there's any value that I have for your life is that it makes it possible for you to show up better and you to show up more fully. And so she helped me to know that that's what I was doing. And so then that gave me all the permission I needed. Because then I was like, oh, okay, well, now I'm not playing nice at all. And I really didn't anymore. And I don't now. Yeah.
In this, because it is both a story of your personal development and real personal, like childhood, parents, family, friends, and the development and changing of your political consciousness, you wind up getting in this book into really in-depth in terms of the difficulty that you have had, the challenges you have had with all kinds of relationships, your relationships with white girls as a young girl, your relationships with black girls when you were young.
Yeah.
And then more politically, but also personally, your relationships with black men.
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder, since this book's publication, and since you have been out there talking about these very complicated relationships that you have, what has the reception been? Have you gotten pushback? Have you gotten defensiveness? Or have you found that your expression of these complications has been well received and heard?
In this political moment, I think everybody's like, just tell us all the things, girl, because whatever will help us get out of this shit show is the thing that we need, right? I do. So I actually haven't gotten as much pushback as I had anticipated. So, white girls are like, white girls are like what we need to hear. So white girls keep tweeting me and they keep saying, I got so much out of this book, even though it wasn't for me. And I was like, and so one day I'm thankful for this, like, right, please buy my book. Like, I appreciate you. And also, I tweeted back and I was like, but the black condition is that we watch a lot of shit that's about y'all and we don't ever tweet y'all and be like, we know this was about y'all and not us. And we got a lot out of it, right? And we're so surprised. So it's like, I just am always wondering why white people are so shocked that, like, oh, we can learn from other humans, even black ones. It's so weird. It's so weird.
It's also pretty remarkable if they've read the book. Like, you write at great length about the Babysitters Club. Like, it is very clear that you are reading.
I had so many friends this week when Netflix was like, we're doing the show again, who share, and I am hype about it. And let me tell you why sometimes I be conflicted, right? Because some girl, let me not diminish her, I don't know her name, but she wrote this piece about, where is Jessie? She's a junior character. She's the only black character in the Babysitters Club. And I was like, but she was 11 and the babysitters are 13. And so she is junior. She will come like yes to black girl solidarity, but also don't be fucking with the Babysitters Club. They're great. Like, I'm saying, like, so I have like whole things, which I don't always want to say around black girls because I'd be like, are y'all gonna put my card? But those white girls from Connecticut were my friends when I didn't have any friends, right? So I love the Babysitters Club. But also, black women have been wonderful and have been like, thank you for this. And look, my whole goal here was to figure out how to write a book about black girls that other folks would see that they also could get something from. And I feel like I've been able to do that, and I'm thankful. And black men, I don't know. Like, they actually tweet me and say that they get a lot out of it, and I haven't had a lot of like public resistance, but what I do have is black women wanting to talk to me a lot about what does it mean to actually try to live out these truths with black men, which is, look, an ongoing and continual struggle. And I think that we just, keep on having this. And it's also a hard political moment because since this book came out, before it came out, I was writing about Bill Cosby. Since it came out, he locked up where he should be. R. Kelly has been arrested like he should be. May he go down for good and be under the jail. And I'm trying to be a prison abolitionist, but today we have prisons and he should be in one. And and we're so, and then, Michael Jackson. I know it. Yeah. I can't bring myself to watch Leaving Neverland. I can't bring myself to do it. But I was talking to a friend and who wrote about this yesterday, and she was saying, that black folks were really struggling. And I was like, they're struggling because they feel like this moment is a cultural assault on black men. And the harder truth to tell is that this moment is a moment where we reckon with the ways that black men have culturally assaulted black women and any women that they had proximity to whenever they could. And that's the reason that people don't be liking black feminists, because we don't have the kind of solidarity that says because of racism, black men should get away with whatever. Like, that's just not my position. My position is racism is no excuse for you to be a sexist, raping bastard. And if that's what you choose to be, then may consequences, terrible ones, befall you. So, yeah.
And something that you've said.
Oh yeah, clap for that.
Yeah.
Clap for black people. Any men who harm women and children and people, we don't need them. Like, we don't, I mean, that's a feminist stance. We should be able to say that. And I can say that in full knowledge of how white supremacy works. Yeah.
And something that you have said to me, I mean, in conversations about Justin Fairfax, the lieutenant governor in Virginia, you know,
Yep.
the notion that black women should not be collateral damage in the rise for the rise of black men.
Look, I believe Fairfax's accusers, and I will believe them until there is good, credible reason not to believe them, because I believe women when they come forward and say they have been raped. I particularly believe black women. I don't think that the sisters who accuse him have anything to lose. And it's just so interesting to me the way that, so it was like we saw that Northam was like trash, right? And either he was in blackface or KKK uniform, but he don't remember, but maybe he was. But you was at a party where people were doing it and you were good. So like, that's all terrible. But you can, cool, you can change. And the harder, so it's like when black people saw Fairfax and thought, oh shit, we might get another black governor of Virginia, because he wouldn't be the first, right? I mean, Virginia had our first black governor since Reconstruction, L. Douglas Wilder, right? But they were like, we could, it's like this switch goes off. I saw folks who I love and respect being like, well, we don't know, because the story seemed a little bit suspect, right? And then all of a sudden the story wasn't suspect, because all of a sudden the sisters really did start to say, here's the thing that happened to me. And I watched people being like, but like Northam has to go, and we're gonna have to talk about what we sacrifice politically. And I was like, if the calculation on the left is that black women are the thing you sacrifice, then I don't believe in your fucking revolution. I reject it's not a revolution if I'm the collateral damage, my safety. When are you asking about me? Right? Because y'all want us to hold the party down, you want us to save the party, you want us to leave the party, and then when you see a black male shining superstar, then all of a sudden, then he can become a dude, It's like, then he becomes a man in that moment, and he becomes one on the backs of women. Oh, let me show how I too participated in a culture of sexual violence that you're also gonna sweep under the rug, right? And here's the tougher truth, right? Which is why it's hard. Here's the thing. It'd be hard out here to be a black feminist. Because the thing we need to say is that Northam going to a terribly racist costume party and either participating or not, or being in proximity or adjacent or whatever, is actually less harmful than raping someone. A costume party and rape, they're not the same. They actually aren't the same. And you only know that if you care about women. And you can only see that if you care about black women. And so I can abhor his racism and still say at the point that you physically violated someone's personhood, that is the worst crime. And so when then folks talk about, when I say to you it's hard to be a black feminist, one of the things that makes me deeply angry is that black men are the people who make that shit hard. Because y'all are so invested in participating in patriarchy that it means that I can't even just be out here having good racial outrage with y'all like everybody else. Like, you ruining all the fun. We get to drag a governor and make sure he don't be in office, and then here you go raping somebody. And now I've got to change what I'm talking about to deal with you, and the fact that I don't want your revolution, because if you get more power, then black girls and women were unsafe when you wasn't nobody. How unsafe will they be now that you are somebody? That's the material calculation. No one asked that question, and it made me deeply upset. And it's the only question we should be asking. Nobody don't give a fuck about his costume party 35 years ago. Not when you got a rapist right under him in the position. Really, that's the harder thing. And black people couldn't get past that because they're like, white supremacy. And I'm like, yeah, but rape though. And so we gotta deal with both. Yep.
I would also point out that both of them are taking an approach that is, you can see, and you're the person who's taught me the most about how there's the system of white patriarchy at the top extends these privileges and these kinds of behaviors and incentives, patriarchy to men across races, and white supremacy to white women, giving them the incentives to back the system that oppresses them. And the way that that is visible to me right now, watching those two clowns in Virginia.
Well,
The third one actually apologized, all right. His apology I thought was like at least like two brain cells had been rubbed together. But the two top ones, what they are doing, and I'm watching it, Democrats, right, progressives, are just, they are looking to their model as Donald Trump, which is if we just don't respond, we don't ever have to leave.
Right.
It's the most authoritative power grab. It's just looking at how the actual monstrous white patriarch behaves, and saying, oh wait, we can just weather this. He doesn't do anything when people accuse him of rape and assault, and when he says racist things on television, and he just keeps the presidency. So here's an approach we could take here in Virginia, is we just don't leave.
In good old Virginia.
Right.
And Justin Fairfax hired, Brett Kavanaugh's law firm. I was like, how on the nose can you be, sir?
Right.
Like, thanks for this admission of guilt. We appreciate it. Like,
I want you to talk a little bit about your journey to feminism. You identify consciously as a black feminist. You were brought to feminism by a black friend, Tracy, to a bell hooks lecture in college, and then took the historical approach of looking at the history of black women as basically having invented feminism. And I want you to talk a little bit about that path.
I went to Howard, and I was at Howard in part because I'd gone through predominantly white schools and classrooms, and I was on the verge of being anti-black because I was bullied terribly as a kid and told, because I was an overachiever, great student, in a small town that was deeply racist, that I was acting white. That shit actually does happen, even though, people are like, it's a myth. It's not a myth. It was my childhood. People do that. They still do it to kids today. I think it's important to say that. And so I was like, white kids were racist and black kids were sort of terrible. These days I have more empathy for the black kids because I get the messages they got that made them believe that to be smart or to be ambitious was to want to be white, right? And so I blame white people for that because they are to blame. And so, but I didn't get that till I got to Howard. Howard was a place that was a healing place for me because there were just so many black folks. You walk on campus the first day, you realize there's so many ways to be black and also black excellence. And so I love Howard, but I love it particularly for its project. It's the reason I love black colleges and think that they are so important. It's the reason I hope Bennett College is able to retain its accreditation fully. We need these institutions. And so I was running around Howard being a race woman. Blackness. And then, right? And then, and I heard about feminism, and somebody at Howard was like, that's white women shit. And I was like, that's right, white girl shit. I didn't read anything. It was not an informed perspective. What it picked up on was my own animus towards the ways that white girls had treated me. And so I was saying, like, one day, oh no, feminism is white women shit. I'm not a feminist. At most, I might be a womanist. I hadn't read any of this. And one of my homegirls, like, heard me talking about that. And she didn't, thankfully, because she was my friend, she didn't call me out in public, but, like, she came knocking on my door at the dorm later, and she was like, you were talking kind of crazy today. Here's a book for you to read it, right? And I call that a homegirl intervention. Like this moment where my girl saw me out here in the streets being raggedy, and she was like, you don't want that. Let's not do that. Read this. She also dragged me to this Bell Hooks lecture. She was like, come on, Bell Hooks is on campus. And I was like, who is that? And she was like, no, girl, she be talking real crazy though. Like, let's go listen. Right? This is like the 90s though, right? So for two regular old black girls in the 90s, like Bell Hooks talking about fuck the patriarchy is like, it sounds crazy. But so we go, we listen. She's a fan. I'm like, Bell Hooks is looking pretty like unimpressed about all of the, sort of race forward madness that happens at Howard. And so that is what I remember about the encounter, is that I sort of go to this lecture and I'm like, this is all weird, but okay. And so years later, so I like read the piece, and I didn't become a feminist that day. I had also read Joan Morgan's When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost, which is a book I love. I still love it. It's probably the book that helped me to get over the hump. And then the thing that happened for me is that I went to Emory to work on a PhD, and I was in these classes with these really powerful Black women professors, and they identified as feminist. And it was in those classes that we started to read Black women. Anna Julia Cooper was one of my favorites, and Pauli Murray and Mariah Stewart, Fannie Barrier Williams, all these sort of dope Black women. And I realized this thing about being in a place that was Black first, which was healing for me, but we learned about dudes. And all of the women that we learned about when I came to Emory had connections to Howard. Pauli Murray's a Howard alum. Anna Julia Cooper lived 2 blocks away. Mary Church Terrell did too. And I just never learned anything about them. And I knew that there was this gap in my education, and I knew that it was an egregious gap. And so all of a sudden, I realized that like I had this history restored to me, and it really mattered. And I saw Black women who modeled for me what feminism meant. It meant that Black girls and women mattered to the project of Black liberation, and that if you weren't talking about us, then you actually weren't trying to liberate us. You were trying to create a different framework to keep us enslaved and to keep us oppressed, right? Keep us subordinate to men. And so that is the reason that I became an unapologetic feminist, because my professors claimed feminism, and they were like, womanism is part of our intellectual genealogy, but the first, word of Alice Walker's womanist definition is a womanist is a Black feminist or feminist of color. That is the first line of the definition. So we claimed Black feminism, and feminism in particular, because we didn't want white women to keep on arguing that they started this shit when they just didn't, right? Black women were the folks in this country, Black women and indigenous women, right? Indigenous women were feminists before there was feminism. They had voting rights, they had property rights, they led, and white women were watching them. But white women were also looking at the condition of slavery they found Black women in, and they were saying, oh, we identify with this. But Black women were the people saying, we don't want to be enslaved either because of our race or our gender. We don't want to be enslaved on the basis of race. And then we want you to consider what it means that Black women and girls are also enduring conditions of slavery, and that our experience of these oppressive systems is different. Black women were saying that in the 1800s. They arguably were saying it in the 1700s, right? And so because of that, when people are like, but why are you a feminist? Because it is part of my ancestral intellectual legacy and heritage to be so. I'm not gonna leave my ancestors' intellectual labor on the table because white feminists are racist today. They've always been racist. Some of them have been better than others. Some of them have had a better critique than others. Some of them have been down for the struggle for liberation. But the people who are mediocre at their politics are never the marker of whether or not you should adopt the politics, right? And so they're just not part of the story for me in that way. And that doesn't mean I don't make comradeship with white feminists. It means that when I try to think about what feminism means for me as a politic, what have Black women and girls been saying about what does it mean to be free? When I look, there is a rich tradition of Black women talking about that, and they are never talking about it solely as a project of dealing with white supremacy. They're always like, yeah, but these men will do us wrong if we're not careful. You go back to the 1800s, and Black women are shading Black men left and right about how they taking up space and how they won't listen and how they talk too much and shit. Like, Black women have always been the same. So super shady. And so they do. So they're doing the whole thing. And so when I read that, I was like, oh, I get it. And these women feel like home. And I feel like this is the world they built for me, and I'm going to inhabit it fully. Yeah.
The last chapter of your book is called Joy.
Yes.
And I think that in conversations about rage and anger, it's so, the anger is divisive and destructive, and sort of negative properties are so well understood and so feared, and we know to sort of cower from them. And too often there is not the direct argument for the relationship between anger and joy pleasure, liberation, connection. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how anger and joy are tied together.
Yeah. They're sort of tied together like the title of your book, good and mad, right? At the same, we're often good and mad at the same time. And read Rebecca's book, because I think she really does a masterful job of laying out for us all of the things that Black women and white women and trans women and indigenous women have built in the midst of their rage, and because of their rage, and because of their desire to see things change. And so that was part of the way I came to it. But let me say a more fundamental thing. If you've ever met a Black woman and just sat and had a conversation with her, the thing that you'll come to understand is that in the space of a good conversation with a Black woman, there will be cussing, praying, laughter, outrageous screaming laughter, right? And joy, all in the space of one conversation. You could be cussing hot mad and also in the next breath be screaming in laughter because of the richness of a fully lived life. And so the thing that being a Black woman has taught me is that these things are not separate, that I am sure filled with rage on any given day, but I also love my life, right? I have a clear sense that there's a purpose, a thing that we should be fighting for. And what I wanted to say to people is that when I'm arguing for the integrity of anger and that it should be recognized and that we get to possess it, I'm arguing that because of that, we should get to possess the whole emotional smorgasbord, right? The whole emotional life, all of the things that are a part of it. And the other reason that I wanted to end with joy is because, one, people don't want stories with terrible endings, right? No one wants that. But also because what I know is that Black women keep on getting up and fighting for things to change because we actually somehow believe that they can. Even, thinking a lot about Stacey Abrams these days, and I'm like, that sister keeps getting up and fighting for different possibilities in a world where she won some shit and it was stolen. And she got to watch the dude, think about that. Think about that. That's the thing, though. If she only lives in the space of rage, then the rage can destroy you. That's why you cannot indulge it. You can embrace it. You can use it. You can acknowledge it. You can tangle with it and wrestle with it and try to figure out how you're going to allow it to show up in your life. That is the relationship that I am inviting folks into. But what I am not inviting you to then do is to let it win. And so when you don't let it win, then what do you embrace? You embrace joy. And joy is not some sappy, I feel happy. Some days I feel happy. Some days I want to cuss people out. But what I try not to do is let people steal my joy. And that is a Black truth. And when you say don't let people steal your joy, don't let people knock you off your square. Don't let people steal your sense of purpose, your sense of dignity, your sense of somebodyness, your sense that you are purpose-driven. And I learned that because I'm a church girl. I'm a preacher's kid. And my whole life, I heard, Black women, joy, this joy. The world didn't give it to me, and the world can't take it away. Now, you ain't got to put that kind of joy in a God concept, but what it says is that our sense of purpose comes from somewhere different than whatever these systems would try to offer to us. So it is a critique of a system. It is a way to stand up to a system and say, these ashes that you're handing me, I don't have to accept them, right? I mean, to be biblical, be quiet, Callahan. That's my pastor. Be quiet, both of you. So my pastor and my associate pastor. But it is a way to snatch beauty from ashes, right? It is a thing that Black women do. And here is why I wanted to end this way too. When I say we can snatch beauty from ashes, I am not saying that then becomes an excuse for people to keep on giving us ashes. That is not what I am talking about. But I am saying that we know that systems of white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism are designed for our destruction. And that part of the way that we conjure a different set of possibilities for ourselves. And these are the possibilities that I watch my mother conjure every day when she was a single mama, being like, I want more, and I cannot see it, but I know I can have it, right? I still look at my mom and be like, how you know that? How did you know that? I can know it because I've had a life very different from my mother. But how does she know it? Living in the projects in Louisiana with a baby to support, right? And not a lot of help. How does she know that? How did my grandmother know it? How did my great-grandmother, born in 1903 in Louisiana, how did she know it? right? And so I keep on thinking that they have some sense that I matter. My happiness matters. My dignity matters. My ability to have some options in this life, they matter. And I don't see anybody who has a clear-cut sense of that in the same way other than black women, and I think we deserve credit for it. I think we need to recognize that I'm not asking us to learn some other way of being in the world. I'm saying that scrappy thing in you that gets you up every day, it is a form of joy that says, I have the right to be here, and I'm gonna make something of this life. And that is the note always to end on, that every day that you get up and you make something of your life, and you say that I'm gonna fight for conditions to be better, even for myself, for my children, for the kids on the block, then you have not let your rage win. You have let your rage power you. And there is something to be enjoyed in that. There is joy in that. There is a joyous spirit about that. And we can't let the way that white supremacist systems understand and story rage rob us of the truth of what rage actually is, which is that sometimes rage is joy in motion. Yeah.
Hi. First, I want to thank you for writing this book. I read it at the end of last year, feeling similarly to how I did after the 2016 election, and coincidentally also traveling to see my family in Nigeria. So I got to read the book away from here, seeing a lot of black faces. It was incredible, and it really did a lot for me.
Thank you.
My question comes off of a story in which I left my former job this last year, and at the time that I was leaving, my boss didn't know I was leaving, and actually at work called me angry. This is, my manager she's a Japanese woman, and in dealing with her, she played dumb a lot when we would talk about things would come up, I would have to quiet my rage at work. Working at a museum in a place where there are a lot of liberal people that believe that they do not hold the same biases that exist at large in society. And so having to be professional, having to ignore when things were obviously not okay that were happening. After the incident in which she called me basically an angry black woman, and I told her I needed some time away from her to sort of collect myself and think about how I was gonna respond, we talked to an artist that we were working with, a black artist, who the next day brought up this trope of angry black woman. And my manager then asked me to explain to her this trope, even though she has been living in this country for 3 decades on now. My question, I guess, is in this professional type of setting, when you are talking to your students about how to navigate the workspace and remain professional, because short of just telling her to go Google whatever question she had, I found myself once again, I'm an artist, I'm a practicing artist, I also work in a museum. I found myself once again having to play an ambassador, a role which is very exhausting, but I had to do it. I wasn't leaving my job yet, she didn't even know I was applying for other jobs. And I found myself in that moment having to explain to her very briefly this history of this terrible trope, and just have her stand there asking more questions until I said, I really can't explain anymore to you.
Yeah.
How do you tell young black professional women how to navigate these spaces, how to deal with these situations in a way in which they don't feel robbed of their dignity, but they also feel like they have, I don't know, it's not their job, it's not my job, but what can you do, I guess, is my question.
Look, I don't know that I have an easy answer. Here's the place that I've been landing when I get these questions about the how. I actually think black women know how. I think the point is that what you had was a shitty set of options. And so what I'm here to affirm is that the options are shitty and that your negotiation of them isn't wrong. It is what you have to do to survive, right? And that what I love is that you picked a boundary spot and you said, I actually can't say anymore. If I advocated anything, I would tell black women, wherever you think that boundary is, move it up, sooner, right? Do less, right? But that doesn't mean that, look, we all have to play nice. We all have to explain sometimes. We all have to take some licks. I remember in my current job, before I had tenure, being on stage at a panel and having a white man accuse me of lying about some data. And, you know, I was one of like 4 black folk in a room, and he, you know, a couple hundred folks, and he was like, you're deliberate, you know, it's not just that you're wrong, you're deliberately and, you know, I'm thinking, did this motherfucker just... I mean, and I'm on a panel, and I'm a junior person, I don't have tenure yet, and I am like, and what I know is that I can verbally take him the fuck apart. I know I can. So that he would never, ever in life ever do that shit to anyone. You know what I mean? Like, this is, look, I'm saying, I'm voicing that for white people so that when you do that shit, know that when you escape, that's what you've escaped. Right? It is amazing. So, I mean, and white liberal people, y'all be doing it. Like some of y'all in this room, you do it. And I'm trying to tell you that y'all are always just on the brink of that, and that's the mild shit. Some of you are always just on the brink of a black person just taking you the fuck apart systematically and gorgeously and like walking away and like with no job, but... Here's the thing, right? I never talk about this publicly. Maybe someday I'll write about it. But part of the reason that I'm not a good person to talk to about it, because I got fired from my first job, because my boss tried it, and I was like, hell no, right? But I was young, and you know, I don't know that so I basically got a professor job so that I don't have to deal with this, right? You know, and I have good colleagues, so that helps. But I would say black women know how to be strategic. Sometimes the licks and knocks that we take are that we have to do the labor of educating people, and it is not our job to do it. And so what I would tell you is that your strategies were fine. Try to draw a stricter boundary when you can. Sometimes we can't. But just also affirm for yourself that after you have done that, say to yourself, this is bullshit. Now, what am I going to do to take care of myself in the midst of having to come into this violent situation every day? Sometimes that's the best that we can do. And the problem is when we tell ourselves that because we don't want them to see us as angry, that we're not actually angry. That's the conundrum I'm trying to get at. What happens when she calls you angry because she's doing shit that's outrageous? Right? And so, yeah, I'm mad because you're being terrible, right? So, yes, I'm mad. I'm mad because you've been being terrible, and now I'm even angry because, and you know, and then you can't say. So it's like they're calling out a truth. So maybe when she saw your anger, you were actually angry in the existential sense, maybe not in the immediate sense. Because here's the other thing. White people and people who are white adjacent, and that is not a shade to people of color until they... The challenge in feminist of color work, and I'm in a women of color feminist collective, the Crunk Feminist Collective is not just black women, is that sometimes women of color have a level of proximity to whiteness that makes them untrustworthy, right? They don't want to be in league with black folks, so then they try to approximate white women. Real talk. And so because she's appropriating white tropes as a way to understand and describe you, right? And so you're in this engagement with her, and she can't see you. And so then part of the challenge is that there is no way for her to sort of see the fact that she is the aggressor, that you're not the aggressor, that all of the things she's doing warrant an angry reaction. But the other thing is that in reading you in a white trope, one of the things white folks, and I think this is true across the board, whatever your political leanings, one of the ways that white supremacy works is that it thinks that black people should be grateful. And what people are actually saying when they say that you're angry, they're saying that you're ungrateful. They're saying that you're not, you know, just like sycophantic in your happiness about the fact that you have a job working in an institution. What white liberals in particular want gratitude. Feed off gratitude. Like to see themselves as magnanimous in a racist world at the expense of black people by demanding as payment for access gratitude. And then are deeply bothered when we like, I deserve this though. I'm here because I do this job well, not because of what you did. You opened a door that should not have been closed, right? So therefore, no, I'm not grateful. Like, I'm good, right? I have joy. right? You didn't give it to me. See, this joy, you didn't give it to me? See, that's what I'm talking about, right? So that's what I'm saying. So just don't play, you have to have, how do we externally play the game? And then there is having an internal narrative. And the internal narrative can't be that when somebody is yelling at you that you're angry and you can't say back to them, yes, I am. But don't then lie to yourself and be like, no, I'm not. They putting anger on me. No. We are angry, but we can't always act that anger out. And the problem is what happens when you get home and you have the emotional disconnect. That's the shit that kills you. It ain't playing the game. Black people have always been strategic. That's why the fuck we survived slavery, right? It is the emotional damage that it does when we can't be honest about the rage we feel because we think that rage will take us out if we acknowledge it. I am advocating for you to be able to hold the rage inside or to acknowledge the rage on the inside, because my contention is when you don't actually acknowledge the rage on the inside, that's when you're at risk of it bubbling over in the wrong moment.
In your book, you talk a lot. You went on at length about Bill Cosby, and how black women supported the women that were assaulted by him, mostly white women. My question is, how do you square that with the way black women responded to R. Kelly and his serial molesting of young black girls? Do you feel like we let them down when we should have stood up more for young black girls? Because I can't tell you how many times I've heard a black woman say, "Oh, that little fast-ass girl, and I just like his music, and I don't think he really did anything wrong, and that wasn't him in the video," or some other kind of bullshit. Yeah. How do you square that with?
Yeah, look, most black women aren't feminists. That's why we on the crusade right now. Right? Most black women aren't feminists because we have been erroneously instructed to think that white supremacy is our biggest problem. And we have also bought into black men's narratives that they are white supremacy's biggest victims. And we have done that because we make the same calculation that white women make, which is the more uncomfortable truth, which is that white women in 2016 made the calculation that they had a better shot of throwing in with their men than throwing in with other women. And black women on a minor level make that calculation every day. We're not gonna let this system take you down, right? And it's like, what has R. Kelly's music ever done for you? Giving you a few bops in the club? And I grew up on R. Kelly. I understand the man's musical genius. I'm just tired of musical genius, again, being more valuable than black women's lives and safety, right? And so I think that what our job is to call out black women and girls and say, we matter. What does it look like for us to matter? But here's what's harder for me. Part of what black women signal to me is that we're so used to not mattering. We're so used to not being at the center of politics that we don't even know what it looks like to advocate for ourselves. Our communities place us in a position where our job is to save black men. Because we know that the system won't save black men, and we know that black men don't always do the emotional and political work to save themselves. And when they do save themselves, they save themselves at our expense. They'll let us keep the lights on. They'll let us, they'll come home, they'll fuck us, then they'll fuck us over. Like, that's just what it is. And so it's easier to blame black girls because here's the thing, black girls are responding. What is harder is that R. Kelly is playing on the same insecurities in black girls that he's playing on in black women. That you are overlooked, that you are unseen, that nobody loves you, that nobody cares about you, but I see you, I love you, here are the things I can do for you, right? And so it irritates the shit out of me, which is why I don't litigate R. Kelly, because I have a praxis that's about not attacking black women. Now, sometimes I'll be like, sis, you're really trying it today. But for the most part, I try not to do that. I try to live on the side of empathy because I believe that black women actually care about the liberation and wholeness of black people, but I don't always think that we get the political tools. So sometimes here's the question I ask. I just say to black women, because look, I've had lots of black women friends be like, some of my homegirls, particularly years ago, my homegirls would be like, well, we dig you. We don't know about this feminist shit you on, but we dig you though, right? And so I didn't go about trying to convert them, but they listened out loud to the way I lived my life, and they saw me fighting for black women and girls, and at some point they realized that meant I would fight for them too, because sometimes what black women and girls are responding to is that they ain't always had black women and girls stand up and fight for them. Right? And so I fight for black women and girls unequivocally, even if I don't like you. I'll fight for you even if I don't like you. I won't talk to you, but because we trying to keep it, as chill as possible, but I'll fight for you. But But that thing, so I think that that's the thing that they're responding to. And so the other thing, though, is I say to black women sometimes, I just be like, you out here marching because another brother has been killed by the police. Who's marching for us? It's like it is like the one example that gets black women thinking. Because we see marches, we march for brothers, and it never even occurs to us sometimes that there should be marches for us. Marches for our sacrifices, marches for those of us who are killed. And part of the reason we don't know what to do is because sometimes the marches would have to be for the, all the black men who are killing black women in black communities. I mean, we lose 8 black women a week to acts of gun violence. Typically, the perpetrators are black men, sometimes lovers, but usually acquaintances. That's 8 black women every week, and it's not some shit that we talk about. And the number would be higher if those statistics actually included trans black women, right? And so we've got a problem, but what I think is that this is why I say in Eloquent Rage that I think black feminism can change the world for the better. That's what I mean, that my primary goal, and I have had black women email me since this book came out and say, I didn't ever think feminism was for me. I didn't think I could live up to some of the stuff y'all were talking about. I get a few different things. And they say, you made this accessible, you made this make sense for us. And so I think our job is not to yell at black women about how they get it wrong, but to point out to them the things that their current system of beliefs actually aren't doing for them. That they're giving black men credit for shit that black men don't do. They're standing up for black men with no expectation of reciprocity. And when it's straight sisters who are doing that in particular, say to them, really? So you want to participate in a system where you know that a brother is not going to reciprocate politically? Because is that also what you're accepting in your personal life? Right? Because when you decide that you actually worth it, you worth it everywhere. In the bedroom and in the streets. Yeah.
Hello, I loved both of your books. I gave them as Christmas presents. And I hope it's not too early to ask what you're working on next. Is there things we can buy anytime soon?
I typically hate the question, but...
Wait, first, we're both working on similar things.
We are, that's right.
We're both working on a very related project.
Yeah,
They're different, but are we...
Okay, yeah. We're talking about our fave. Stacey Abrams. Yeah.
We're both writing pieces about Stacey Abrams.
Yeah. So those will be out soon, and you can see them. We both have had a chance to interview her and talk to her. The Crunk Feminist Collective, which is my crew, we're doing a book, a young adult book on feminism. That's the next move. And and I'm slowly working my way around to the next book project, which I think is going to be about time. I have this TED Talk about time, politics of time, race and the politics of time, which you can go and watch. And now I'm trying to develop that into a book project. So that's the next thing for me. What about you?
No. No, I'm still recovering from the last one. I don't know. If
Novel idea. Recovery.
Thank you, though. There was I saw another hand up here. Yeah.
I know you probably love teaching in the classroom, and I know you're very good at it, but I really want you to run for some political office. Have you ever considered that?
No, thank you. Here's the thing. If you read Eloquent Rage, you will know 2 things about me. Well, you'll know one thing about me in that context, and I'll tell you the other thing. The one thing is I ran for student body president in college. It went very bad. I decided that I would never again be somewhere begging people to vote for me. I still fucked up and tried it one more time. It didn't work out that time either. So I feel like people like me like this, but don't like me when they want me to run something. So I've learned my lesson. The other thing is, I feel like there's a limit to the amount of times you can say white supremacy in print and then run for office. And I feel like I've said it, and I've said F the patriarchy.
We want a politics where everybody's talking about white supremacy.
Really
this is the idea. This is the future we want.
What does that have to do with me, though? Like, I'm not... No, ma'am. Like, So I want to be able to... Look, I want to be able to curse like a sailor, and I sort of don't do well with the way that... The thing I remember many things about running for student government president, but one of the things I remember most is people trying to police how I look. you need to wear earrings, you need to put on makeup, you need to, they wanted me to sort of do this high femme performance thing, which I sometimes like to do because I'm a girl and I like to do it sometimes. But I don't want to, but anything that you tell me I have to do, it is a way for me to show out. And so I think that there's some really dope people, and what I want to do is give them money, and I'll phone bank for them. But I don't think political office is the thing I'm supposed to do. I feel like I'm supposed to be some version of a professor in some form of my life, so I'm just doing that.
I don't watch anything like Fox News, but I did catch something about the way in which the Republicans are attacking our Muslim sisters who have just gotten into office.
Yeah.
And I'm really concerned about what's imploding or going on in their lives, and whether or not there are women's groups that are we mobilizing around protecting those women?
I mean, one of the things we have to do is make sure the Democratic Party supports Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib.
Which means applying direct pressure to them. One thing that everybody in this audience can do if you are angry about the way that Ilhan Omar is being targeted and Rashida Tlaib are being targeted is call your representatives right now, because the Democrats in the House today put forth this crazy resolution to censure Ilhan Omar, this performative piece of bullshit. So but they will know if you call them that you're angry about this. So that is actually something everybody can do right now, is you can call when you get home tomorrow and say, if this is how you feel, this is ridiculous, because it is the Democratic Party that is engaged in the kind of censuring and listening to the right-wing narratives about this, and it is in the hands of the people who are supposed to be represented by these politicians to let them know that you're dissatisfied with it.
Absolutely.
I'm actually interested in your writing practice, and I want to talk about how you edit rage. So that you actually, you both actually write, Rebecca, your book, you write more specifically about sort of learning to allow the rage to come out in your writing. But as someone who writes with passion, it's very interesting to get to the editing process without editing out the thing that actually made you write it in the first place. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the great thing is having good editors, and for me, the other thing is, usually the way that I have to edit is that I soften a little bit. So when I'm mad, then I'm like, and all y'all trash, right? And then, in the edit, it becomes too many of y'all are trash, right? So that's sort of like, I just have to be like, let me be nuanced. Let me allow for the possibility that there are, in fact, some people who are trying to do good in the world. Because, that's the one thing about rage is you be like, the whole world, this is all messed up. It's all going to, and so there is a moment of clarity that's about making sure that the rage is not a distraction from the argument. And I actually care deeply about the argument. So for me, that's always my guiding thing is I want you to feel something, but but when you walk away from my writing, I want you to feel something, but I want you to be able to back that. I told y'all, this is my whole life's work, right? I don't want emotions without some kind of intellectual heft to them. And so I want you to be able to walk away and say, and I'm justified in feeling it for these 3 reasons, right? So that's always the thing I'm trying to achieve, is to make sure that, because I guess I feel like a clearly rendered thesis statement storied well can actually help people to feel all the things. But I have good editors too, because I don't know that I'm good at editing rage like that. Yeah. What you think?
Well, I'd like to have a cogent answer to this about how I do it in some systematic way. And in fact, I think that recently, when I've been out talking about a book about anger, and where I have written about my process for a long time as the kind of journalist I was who was writing about gender inequality, racial inequality, economic inequality, of course anger was guiding my work, but I made it funny and approachable, and now I can be more, I would have told you, now there's a kind of freedom in having this open conversation where I can be more upfront. But I will also tell you the second truth is that directly before coming on stage, I was telling Brittney that my stomach is upset. I'm upset because I'm trying to work on the project of how to write a piece that I'm so angry about. Mm-hmm. So there's actually not a good answer, because here I am out after months of hawking a book about how angry, right? And my stomach has been in knots for 2 weeks as I try to figure out how to make the anger that I feel about the subject I'm writing on, which is no secret to this audience at this point. How do I make that anger clear? How do I get it past my editors? How do I get my editors to respect it and to let it go? And how do I make it persuasive to the readers? So there's not actually any clean answer to this. It's really hard to express rage in a world and a system that does not make space for it and does not want to hear it.
Yep. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you go for it. Like, just go for it and recognize that the folks that are trying to hear you will hear you. And the people who aren't, they never were going to anyway. Would be writing. I remember one time writing this piece and using the imagery of charred flesh, and having white people be like, "She's advocating burning us up," and I was like, "What now?" I'm talking about how y'all be burning other people up. That's actually what I'm talking about. But I mean, it was like massive outrage. People were calling me for me to get fired from my job, and I kept rereading the line, going, "That's not what it says," and realizing that they really weren't trying to hear me. But I just. In this moment, I just feel the freedom, like, to actually say it. And because the other thing that I was listening to you and I was thinking, this is so interesting, right? Because it's like how dudes, when they start to feel stuff, they be like, logically, if you look at the situation, logically, the evidence says whatever, right? This is how you know that men are starting to have feelings about something, because they start appealing to logic and evidence, right? And the thing that it reminds me of is that the only difference between us and them is that they write out of rage too. They're just not honest about it.
Right.
And we are. Right. And so we're trying to do it with a little bit of integrity. And what they're doing is writing stuff that sometimes is not emotionally honest at all. And therefore it's often intellectually dishonest, but it's like well argued. And what we're trying to do is make sure that our emotions don't take over our intellectual project. And what has been helpful for me is remembering that that my intellectual project reminds me that my emotions are totally and completely justified. Sure. Yeah. That's all I got. I think
we had one last one you said, but.
Excuse me.
Thank you. I just finished reading the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and I was hoping either or both of you could talk on the topic of when anger is really just the defensiveness of people being called out on anything, that the anger that she describes in that book is white people not wanting to own up to their own racism. So any variation of either of you speaking about that kind of anger.
Yeah, look, it's so interesting to me that people, folks are like, but anger, and I'm like, I'm talking about black women's anger. Distrust white people's anger. What are y'all mad about? Like, I mean, the world is still going pretty well for you. Now, I don't know how long that's going to last, because under Trump, white people got in bed with a person who does not give a fuck about them. In the aggregate. He really does. He don't care about your health care, whether you live. He don't care about climate change, I've been listening to climate change podcasts for the last 2 days, and now I'm like, it's all going to shit. We're just all going to be in the ocean. It's just the whole country's going to fall off into the sea, and no one cares, right? And so, I'm sorry. Let me not be an alarmist. So, yeah, like, look. So, I mean, the thing that I think that like white folks who voted for Trump and white people who do this other thing that are like, we have to understand the like anger of the white working class, right? We have to be empathetic to them. And it's like, I understand that racism made you write a check your ass can't cash. Like, that's what happened. Racism is the only thing that consistently makes white people vote against their economic interests. And that is as true in 2019 as it was in 1819, right? Legit. Right? And so I'm talking about black women's anger because I think it's more honest. I'm literally arguing that I think black women's anger is a more honest political project. I think white anger is rooted in dishonesty. White rage, I mean, read Carol Anderson's book, White Rage, right? That book is all about the way that here's the thing. It's like white people are mad because we cannot account. So when Barack Obama was elected, black people, like, we had whisper first we thought that they were gonna kill it. And then we were like, okay, so black women were having these prayer circles like, Jesus, if you ain't never did nothing else for it, like, just not him and Michelle and the children, Jesus. Like, I mean, look, and I believe in Jesus, so thank you, Jesus, right? No one killed him. But the other thing, right, is we were like, white people are gonna make us pay for this. And here's the thing, and we maybe thought we would lose the courts. We would, they would not give us some legislation we wanted. They would make, we didn't anticipate this. I don't know any black person that saw this shit. I really, like, that is the thing. And so, what I'm interested in white people having a conversation about, and not just on the right, because it's easy on the right, but there were Barack Obama, Trump voters, right? I'm interested in white people really, and I say this to white liberals all the time. The way that you know that you have really done some work around your racism is, are you good with a black person running something that affects your material life, right? It's not just, are you good with you bringing some black people into your organization and being like, I helped integrate. No. If a black person is your boss, are you good? Because there was like a psychic trauma to white people when they saw that black man in office for like, white people are like, the only way we know to put the world right again. I actually didn't mean to do that. But the only way we know to put the world right again is to put the most mediocre white man that America has ever produced in the White House and give him free reign over the entire free world, and then we will feel like all is well. So isn't that interesting psychology, that part of what white people who voted for him are saying to us is that they equate the highest levels of black excellence with the highest levels of white mediocrity. And that for them, parity and a normal world looks like that white people only feel secure if the most mediocre white man can achieve what you have to be literally the height of American achievement to get if you're black. That is the thing that is shocking, and that is why white rage is not trustworthy, and that's why I'm not talking to white people. I want white people who get it, like you, who are reading Robin DiAngelo's wonderful book. I want y'all to talk to white people and to call them out and be like, and here, if you need to be empathetic to these people to get them to listen to you, then the teacher in me, okay, is saying to you, the thing you need to be talking to them about is, what is the fear at the heart of the anger? What is the thing that you are so afraid of? And then do what my therapist then says to me all the time. Now, reality test that fear, right? Is it actually true that y'all slipping, right? Because it don't look, I mean, you have more wealth, you have more power. Congress still look as white as it ever did. I mean, and look, like literally just having 2 Muslim women in the Congress, these folks, the Democrats, the ones we're hanging our hopes on, are out here censuring Ilhan Omar. Like, she is not a threat, and they perceive her as one. So that is a conversation white people need to have, and that is, it is different to say to white people, your anger destroys whole communities. Your anger limits life chances and possibilities for everyone who is non-white, because the difference between, and I have said this before, the difference between white anger and black anger and brown anger and Muslim anger, anybody that is not white, is that white anger, white feelings get treated as facts. Black facts get treated as feelings. That's the fundamental difference. And white feelings get treated as facts, and white people actually have power to make their feelings become facts, become reality for the rest of us. And the rest of us are just fighting for the world to hear that the things that we're saying are actually true. That it's not just what we feel, we're not just hypersensitive, it's not just our impression. The cops are killing us, capitalism is killing us, right? There is a white supremacist in the White House, right? He doesn't mean us well. He is self-interested, he is a liar, he is a colluder, he is all the things. And no one can hear that, and so we have got to figure out how we came to a place where we are so invested in white power. We learned in the 19th century how destructive white power was, and this is the last thing I'll say to you. The thing I've been saying to white people and I have to talk about how you edit your rage. Here's my edit of my rage. The thing I've been saying to white people, I want y'all to look at the example of the Civil War. Because in the Civil War, it was the one moment that white people were willing to sacrifice everything for the principle that black people should be free. Not equal, but free. That's weird, but true. White people killed their own relatives to save the Union, and because they thought that black people should not be enslaved. And so it should tell you a few things. One, that when white people are struggling, when I talk in sort of sweeping generalizations about how white people are, I'm invoking the Civil War for the good white people in this audience, so you'll know that you actually have an ancestral legacy of doing the right thing on race. If you needed one, there's one example, okay? Abolitionists were your people too. So claim them if that's what you need to feel all right. Two, white people also proved to us in the Civil War that they were willing to die for the right to oppress black people for life. When we talk about the root of the plants that we're dealing with now, of what we are reaping now, it's the same root. And when we see that level of anger, it's the same root. That desire that we should actually not be free. And so what I'm saying to white people, I am not telling you that you have to kill your own people to do right. I am telling you that empirically history suggests that was the one time we got white people to make a massive shift. And so if white people don't want conditions to get to the place where you have to kill your own people to get them to stop oppressing people again, if that is not the future that you want, then what are you willing to do to stop it? That is really the mandate.